Hello, hello. Heather Jean here with another episode of Confidence with Coffee. In this segment, we are talking about this week's podcast, Vodcast, it's all about confidence on camera. So, whether you use Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever it is for your work, or whether you are going live on social media, or whether you are recording a podcast or being podcast guest, you will need to get used to going on camera. More and more often, that's just part of our daily life. And a lot of us don't prefer to be on camera. So when that happens, and we avoid it or we keep our camera shut off if we're on a workshop or masterclass online or on a meeting at work, it's quite daunting. I used to not want to be in photographs with my family, something I now regret. I used to avoid anything because I would see me reflected back. But I could tell you, having done this for a while now, it gets easier. I think there's something that happens in our head if it's being recorded, especially. It's like a shift. It twists, and it's a bit like when you're sharing your ideas with your team. That's one thing. You're putting up a social media post. That's one thing. But then if you're asked to do a presentation, that word conjures up things for a lot of us that is quite daunting. And so when we think about being on camera, we can have a reaction to it. What you have to realize is that what you feel is not what others see. And so in this episode, which is on podcast right now, on audio version, check out Confidence Through Cabaret, wherever you get your podcasts. It's also the full episode, which is just over an hour, is on this YouTube channel on the Vodcast playlist. So do go check it out because there's a lot of tips and tricks in there for you to enjoy. So we are talking this week with the amazing Adrian Spencer, who is a co-pioneer of Confidence Through Cabaret, is an artist in their own right, is a video and podcast professional editor, has edited all of the videos pretty much for Confidence Through Cabaret, all the podcast episodes and so on. And they are also a motion graphics creator. So in addition to their own professional world, they are supportive of us in Confidence Through Cabaret. And that means that we can bring you great content. But I still have to show up on camera. My guests, my co-pioneers still have to show up on camera from time to time because that's how we broadcast. That's how we have this YouTube channel. That's how we have our social media lives and also our master classes. And so it's something that is worthwhile building up as a skill. If you're comfortable on camera, there's always more to do. I'm constantly learning about the different functions, different ways that I can make things a little bit slicker, make things a little bit easier. So that means that I can let go of worrying about all of the technology and I can just get on with sharing the content. So let's have a look at our video clip now from our conversation, Adrian Spencer and myself.
Don't feel like you need to brand your video straight away. I think what's really important is that you start. So don't worry about your logo. Don't worry about what kind of fonts you're using or colors. I think people can use this as an excuse for not starting. Like, get the podcast up and be consistent. What's really important is you're producing content every week. So yes, at some point you will need to be, I'm sure a lot of you watch YouTube videos, you'll need to be branded and it will need to be slick and it will need to be consistent, but don't worry about that when you start. Just get the content out there.
So that can be the hardest bit, is getting started, right? When we first think about it, it's the whole thought process. And our mind body, as we talk about all the time, is very connected. That will have a physiological response of what you're saying to yourself in your head, and how you're feeling in your body will have a response to how easy it is or not to access the content that you want to be able to share. One of the things that we didn't talk about in the episode that I wanted to pick up is when we are just getting started. I wanted to have everything. I wanted to have all the branding, the microphone, the lighting, everything right away. And the truth is we don't need it. And I didn't need it. I didn't go with it at first. and we slowly build up, and then we get our logo, we get our branding, we get our colors up there and our banners and so on. I'm a big fan of StreamYard. If you check the Vodcast show notes, you will find the invite link to join StreamYard. And this is a genuine invitation from me. If you want to start it on StreamYard, which is the absolute easiest, and if you've been here for a while, you know I am not a tall techie, but I am happy to jump on a call with you and talk you through some of the basics to help you get started. I've helped many people to be able to start their own podcasts or vodcasts, or to be able to go live using technology. And I've done that work for free because I believe that it is essential as part of Confidence Through Cabaret, that we not only get the momentum going for building our confidence, but that we also, feel good about taking up space unapologetically, that we are able to share our message and raise our voice and get that message through to the ideal audience that we're trying to reach. So genuine offer. If you do want to start on StreamYard, then check out the invite link. In fact, I'll put it in the show notes here as well, so that you can find out how easy it really is. The harder part is in thinking about what we want to say and thinking about how we want to say it. And in the episode, there's some fantastic tips about our setting, our lighting, our sound, things like editing, whether we should edit or not, and engaging with our audience. I choose not to edit because I believe in perfectly imperfect. I don't believe that the ums or the sort ofs and likes, that I don't believe that they interfere with us getting our message across, so long as it's not overly repetitive. And in my 25 years as a corporate training consultant and coach, I spent a lot of time helping people with their presentations. And first of all, there's that word presentation, and so getting over that and the limiting beliefs that come around that, but also in terms of how we engage with our audience, because that is all important. And sometimes those ums or pauses or filler words, so long as they're not overly repeated, they can help us to be able to slow down a little bit. They can help us to be able to give our audience a chance to breathe and think, instead of it just being constantly flowing very quickly. And I have a tendency to want to talk very quickly, so those pauses give us all a little bit of a break. The other thing is around gestures. And again, as long as they're not super repeated over and over, you'll see Adrian rubs his hands together. I talk with my hands. Those gestures are not random. Those gestures help us to be able to access the information that we wanted to share in our brain. So if you think about it, it's a bit like if you're trying to describe a spiral staircase. Try this, sit on your hands and try and describe to somebody who's never come across it. Let's say it's an alien, they've just arrived on the earth. How would you describe a spiral staircase? Well, the first thing that starts to happen if you're sat on your hands is you'll use your body to do the circular motion. If you pull your hands out, then you'll start doing the circular motion with a finger or your hand. And that is because our gestures are a fraction of a second ahead of our words. So if you're trying to give somebody directions and you're saying go up the road and go left, your left gesture will be a fraction of a second ahead of your words. The same if you get directions from somebody and they say go up the road and go left and they're pointing to the right, as I know with StreamYard, because it's a mirror, I know that I'm pointing to the right. You are better off to follow their gestures than to follow their actual language. So gestures can help us to be able to access the information. They can help us to gain momentum to get going. So don't worry about your gestures, unless they get distracting or they are nervous gestures. So if you're playing with your hair or your earrings or your rings or whatever it is, if I'm presenting, I don't wear any jewelry at all because I know that I play with them. And so I try and keep it as simple as possible so that I don't, that doesn't become a distraction. Same, and we talk about this in the episode, people who are holding a pen. I'm very often holding a big felt tip pen for flip chart writing, and that's fine and it can flow with your gestures in your hand, so long as they don't, you're not clicking the pen, which is very annoying. I mean, already this will be annoying to you, nor it, making it sort of circle in distracting ways. But if you're holding it, it can feel like a security between you and your audience, almost like I have a, a personal space boundary around me, and I'm establishing that, and I'm maintaining that. And we all have personal boundaries, right? As in a space where we're comfortable. And some people can come closer to us, and some people, for example, if we've just met them, we tend to have a greater space between us and them. And especially, nowadays when we're not hugging and things like that, you know, um, I used to do a networking program called Kissing with Confidence, which was all about like, how friendly do you get? How quickly? How comfortable are you and are they? And reading those signals. And so that personal boundary, when somebody's come into your personal space. Think about when you're at a ATM, a bank machine, and somebody's a little too close, and you're trying to put in your personal details or read your details on screen, especially your PIN. Then you don't want somebody near you. You'll very quickly turn around and kind of think, I don't like, back off. And the same happens now when we're standing in a queue, and somebody's coughing, then we think, I need more space. So you're aware of your personal space. You're aware of others' personal space and when you step in it or don't. I quite enjoy kind of testing where that boundary is, taking a step forward. And that's just kind of, amusement to me while I'm queuing, taking a step back, the person behind me, how much personal space do they need? Do they feel like they want to back away, and so on? So that personal space with a pen or something in our hand can help us to kind of add bigger gestures, and they can be there as the tool that we need them to. For example, if I need to write on my flip chart with my pen. But I think when we think about gestures, we're often so nervous about, using natural gestures, and it really can emphasize a word. I just said using our natural gestures rather than having natural gestures, and it can really help us add energy. It also helps us let go of some of that nervous energy. So, being expansive, using our gestures, that we're almost kind of throwing that energy out there to our audience, and that helps them engage, and they'll give you energy back, and they'll be more energized, which helps them absorb the information. And that energy exchange will help you come across with more passion and more, it'll be more interesting. Your voice also will start to vary and go up and down instead of it being a monologue. So gestures are fantastic, and verbal gestures like the ums and ahs are helpful as well, as I've just said, except when we overuse them, except when they are nervous gestures. So the sooner you can get that nervous energy out, then the sooner it can be out there and not contained within your body on a loop around your body. So the other thing that we didn't really touch on too much on the podcast episode was about, just getting started. It's like, where do I start? Well, the first thing that you need to start on, particularly if you're an introvert, in this context, I'm thinking about, you like to think things through in your head, then have some bullet points. You can have those on a Post-it note somewhere, hidden below your camera if you're live, or you can have actual notes. There is nothing wrong with, I'm trying to put my notes on the camera here. There's nothing wrong with reading from it, because it can actually add credibility to saying, I'm checking my notes to make sure it is accurate. And that can be really useful for things like when you're quoting, if you're giving statistics, or you're quoting somebody, then checking or reading from your notes is actually enhancing your credibility. But if you have things that you want to say and you're worried about, maybe you're giving 5 tips for something, then you might want to have your 5 tips written down. You might even want to have a couple of bullet points written down. I'm an extrovert, so I think out loud. I think about what I want to say, and then it just flows out, and I think outside of myself. So the first time I'm hearing my thoughts are as they're coming out. But I know my material. I know my subject, and I'm very well versed in talking about those things. So I know that I'll be able to access that information from my brain, and I use gestures to kind of keep that momentum and to find the link between my body and my mind in order to access what it is I want to say. So, for example, on this segment, I don't have a script. The only time I refer to my notes in this segment, if you watch back over the other Confidence with Coffees, I check back if I'm talking about these are the things we talked about with my guest. So, checking back with those is fine. But I think, a lot of us, we're thinking, oh, what if I dry up? What if I don't say something? What if I don't get everything out that I wanted to? Well, first of all, your audience doesn't know that. So they don't know what you missed out, so long as you didn't miss out a step. If you're giving five tips and you only give four, but you meant to give five, that's okay. They don't know what your fifth tip was going to be. So if there's a chance that you're going to forget it, then set yourself up with some notes. There are also a lot of applications where you can record, you can pre-write it, and then it acts as a teleprompter. And those are great to a point, but your audience doesn't want to, hear you reading from a script. So try and make sure that your eyes aren't going back and forth as you read from the teleprompter, and try and, that's quite a skill in itself. And I find it distracting to try and check from a teleprompter. Sometimes I don't have my phone with me right now, but sometimes I'll hold my phone, not in the camera, but, down lower so that I can check with, yeah, this was my third point. So that helps me in case I dry up. But it's important that you know what you want to say or know your subject very well. So setting yourself up for success is helpful to just kind of have bullet points. Most of the time, if I write bullet points, I don't refer to them, but I know that they're there. And I've also pre-thought it, so I know what I wanted to say. I've written my outline, and I don't tend to need to check back again because I'm an extrovert. If you're an introvert, no problem checking back. It's absolutely fine. 9 times out of 10, you'll see people saying my third tip, and then going, after they check their notes. So put some time into knowing what it is that you want to say. And here's the key bit: know your intention, right? Know why you're communicating, know what it is that you're sharing with your life, not the details necessarily, but certainly know what your intention is. If your intention is to share tips about being on camera, then that has to be constantly at the forefront of your mind. And you'll find on this episode that sometimes we diverted off into a little bit of a tangent, which was relevant, but it's then about bringing it back and saying, how does that fit? My intention was to talk about confidence on cameras. So how does what we're talking about on stage translate into our camera work, or into our confidence work, or whatever it is? And you'll see that I'm always bringing the conversation back into the full intention. So know what your intention is. Now, that could be a good thing to write on a post-it note and just kind of keep that somewhere in your eye line that you can glance at to make sure that you're not diverting off and never coming back. So that your audience knows that they're getting what they're there to get, or what your intentions were to share. So what I would say, if you're new to this and it's uncomfortable, is just get used to being there on a YouTube channel. Set up a YouTube channel. It takes minutes. I'm not a techie person, and even I can do that. And then just talk to the camera, and you can leave it as unlisted, right? It doesn't even have to go up, so nobody even has to see it. It's just content there. And sometimes people want to re-record. Sometimes people don't want to re-record. Sometimes we're also distracted. I just realized that my dog has got another sock, and so I can hear tearing, and I'm like, oh, okay. But you know what? Because I know what it is that I'm here to share, it makes it easier for me to come back to. So having that intention, somewhere, kind of, if you get distracted and you start thinking about how am I going to get that sock off of that dog or not, then when you come back, you can go back to your point. I believe in perfectly imperfect. I believe that so long as you have a message to share and you are passionate and want to share it, you should be sharing it. So that means taking up space, owning our space. That means not being apologetic either in our body or in our sharing of our messages. So you deserve to be sharing your message. You should be sharing your message. We need your message. And the right audience will find you. It might take some time, but they will find you. And while they're finding you and while that's all getting out there, that's when you get a chance to practice, polish, grow your confidence, your skills, knowledge, and experience. And and then the two come together beautifully. And if you wanted to, you can re-record some of your early things where you think, that content was great for me, but I also want to make it a little bit slicker, or re-record some parts of it. So go check out the podcast episode or the vodcast episode. Whether you prefer audio or visual version is up to you. We provide both of those. We're on all of the socials as Confidence Through Cabaret, with the exception of Twitter, which is at YBYWYS. Those 6 little letters are also in our clubhouse. I'm at Heather YBYWYS. So go and check out our social media content. And those 6 little letters stand for a reminder that it is your body. You deserve to feel good. You deserve to take up space and own it unapologetically. And it is your world. You get to create the content that you want to create for the audience that you want to create. And it is your stage. Take up space, step into your spotlight and own it. I will see you either live in the community on Facebook. Do join the Facebook community if you want to get more confidence. It's a very supportive environment. We share some of that on our other socials, but the conversation is going on in the community mainly. You're more than welcome to comment here on YouTube, because I check that out regularly as well. Again, please like and subscribe, and just feel free to connect with us, because it is important that we all have confidence in our personal life, work life, and stage life. We deserve it. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you with another episode of Confidence with Coffee next Thursday, another podcast or vodcast episode next Wednesday. Lots of coffee in the communities here. Check out the other playlists on YouTube. Thanks again. Bye for now. Bye.